Intermittent fasting and Ramadan fasting are quite different. It's almost like comparing apples to oranges because intermittent fasting is awesome, but there's one big glaring difference between intermittent fasting and Ramadan fasting. Ramadan, you are dry fasting. So you are putting yourself in this hypertonic state where your body is really seeking out fluids, which triggers a whole different kind of autophagy, and it triggers a whole different response that we have to pay attention to. Okay, now there was an interesting paper that was just published not that long ago, published in the Complementary Medicine Research Journal, that took a look at an extreme, I know it's a lot more than a typical Ramadan fast, 5-day dry fast, but what it did is it illuminated some of the things that are going on within the body because it's the first formal look at dry fasting. So now I'm able to provide better context for those that are going through Ramadan and are fasting. Because a lot of times what will end up happening is you would think that someone would have this ideal body composition change during Ramadan, but oftentimes you find it's the opposite. And the reason behind that is, well, they're still getting this bolus of calories coming in. They're just getting it in at one sitting, and they're getting it in, after it's dark, which is not ideal for body composition to begin with. But then there's other things that are just compounding it. So we can make some simple changes here. Now I want to jump in and talk about one very important thing, because I know the attention span of people is small, and I know that not everyone's going to watch the full video. The very important thing I need you to know is that you do not need to be taking in any form of electrolytes during a dry fast, during your Ramadan fast. Okay, if you look at the chart that's on the screen, we see that sodium levels, chloride levels, and potassium levels stay very elevated during a dry fast. I shouldn't say elevated, but they stay stable. Okay, we have this thing called vasopressin. Vasopressin is also known as antidiuretic hormone. And what it does is it sort of hijacks the water that would normally be coming from our kidneys to our bladder and reroutes it back to our body because it knows we're somewhat dehydrated. As a result of this, it's also rerouting sodium back to our body. So if you were to take a salt tablet or anything like that, you could really skyrocket your electrolyte levels and throw things off. Additionally, you do not want to be taking electrolytes right after your fast either, okay? Now, I want to just touch on the most important stuff first. After your fast, you really should go slow with how much water you bring in, okay? I'm talking 300 milliliters or so every hour for a couple of hours. And I know it's hard because you're going to bed shortly thereafter, but I would rather you consume 300 to 500 milliliters of water in shorter stints than completely dilute your electrolytes right before going into another fast. Because what's going to happen is your body's going to have this natural response to urinate after you drink water, which is going to change your electrolyte levels once again. So then you're going into your next fast the next day in an already diluted state. Then you're having a decrease in water volume, so you're going to really throw off electrolytes. So anyway, that's just kind of the general theme there. Now, I want to touch on breaking the fast really quick, and then I'm going to get into some more details of what's happening during your actual dry fast. When you break your fast, I know that it is generally customary to have dates. I know it's generally customary to, enjoy food a little bit, but I just encourage you to do one very important thing. When you break your fast, try to break it with lean protein of some kind. Now, if you are vegetarian or if you are vegan, I would recommend a simple lean protein shake made with almond milk or coconut milk first, okay? Very simple. And then an hour or so later, then go ahead and have a little bit more variety. And I am okay with you having a little bit of dates, as a matter of fact. I'm okay with that combination of fructose and glucose, but I really would not exceed 3 dates if you can. I know it's easy to just go ham on them, just have a bunch of them, but if you can limit it to 3, you actually do yourself a good favor. You get a nice little insulin spike, you get a nice little fructose ride, which does not spike insulin and allows you to get a little bit more out of it. Now, if you eat meat, I would recommend leaning into fish and poultry so you can get your thiamine levels restored. I would recommend you keep it as bland as possible. Okay, now I know this might not be the most fun thing to hear because I know you want to enjoy food, but the reality is I see way too many people just completely blowing their diets and ruining their body composition and taking months to get their metabolism back. I would say the 30 days of Ramadan is your opportunity to get in the best shape of your life. Okay, you just need to modify things. So yes, it should be relatively bland. Okay, I do not recommend that you have this massive consumption of carbs and fats consolidated. You really should allocate your first meal towards being just that protein. Your second meal an hour later towards being a little bit of carbs and protein. Your dates, maybe a little bit of quinoa, maybe a little bit of teff, maybe a little bit of some gluten-free starch of some kind, and again, more protein. And then your third meal if it's not too late at night, that's when you bring the fats in, because what that's going to do is that's going to trigger what's called cholecystokinin, CCK. It's going to start this sort of metabolic digestive response that's going to allow you to be satiated. But I also want to make sure that you are getting in enough soluble fiber. This is so critical for that short chain fatty acid production. Now, for two reasons. One, you need your fiber. Okay, I don't want you just going cold turkey off of fiber, because then you're going to be constipated the whole time. But secondly, and actually even more importantly, is because that short chain fatty acid production that you get from good soluble fiber like flax, like chia, like artichoke, like asparagus, that actually helps your body utilize glucose better, which means when you do come off of your fast, your body's going to suck up the nutrients better. Okay, now I know I'm breezing through this really quick, but I want to just give you the most information possible in the shortest amount of time. Timing your workouts. Ideally, since you are dry fasting, you would actually be better off getting a very mild workout towards the end of your fast, where you know that right after your fast, you can hydrate and you can actually consume some food. Now, hear me out on this. I do not want you working out at a super intense level. Okay, you are dry fasting and ultimately going to be at the end of a dry fast, which means you already have a 600% increase in cortisol during a dry fast. That is huge. That is a huge stress response. But I also don't want you to go through your whole period not working out. I understand that. So what do most people do? Well, they'll usually work out early in the morning in a fed state and then go into their fast, completely just depriving themselves of nutrition after their workout. Why not flip the tables a little bit, do a mild workout, so that after your workout, you're also breaking your fast. You'll be extra insulin sensitive, okay, because you're at the end of a fast. You'll be extra insulin sensitive because you just worked out. And the protein that you consume when you break your fast is going to allow you to actually build some muscle from it. Then the food that you're consuming after that is actually going to have a stronger metabolic drive to trigger some protein synthesis. But again, I cannot overstress. You are going to be dehydrated. Your cortisol levels are high. I would not recommend you do anything high intensity. What I would recommend is focus on time under tension, do slower moves where you're focusing on muscle, focusing on toning, focusing on that. Trust me, you're gonna have plenty of time to hit your cardio later. If you wanted to do cardio, I would recommend that you do cardio upon waking, just in a fasted state, and then eat something prior to going into your fast. So cardio, and if you sweat, then you may want to consider taking in some electrolytes. For the food selection during your eating period, there are honestly a lot of things on the table once you get through that phase after breaking your fast. I put a link down below for what is called Thrive Market, who I talk about all the time because I have specific fasting bundles and keto bundles and just specific shopping lists for people that are doing intermittent fasting and keto and stuff like that. So there's a link down below. They're a big supporter of this channel. Plus they do make it easy, especially during Ramadan. If you wanted to get things delivered to your doorstep, make it super easy. Like I get all my pantry goods delivered through them. So that way I get like the seaweed snacks that I can get more of, like the iodine for my thyroid function, which I would highly recommend you consume seaweed snacks during your eating period. Also like flax crackers, chia, things that I'm talking about. So do recommend them. There's a link down below. They're a big supporter of this channel. Thank you, Thrive Market. And hopefully it saves you a little bit of money and a little bit of time if you use them down below in the description. Prior to starting your fast, I would recommend that you do not have a whole lot of veggies and a whole lot of fiber. So the morning of, okay? So if it was a traditional fast where you were hydrated, I would actually want that because it would keep you satiated. But during a dry fast, what I don't want to have happen is have water drawn into the intestines. Soluble fiber, just as the name implies, is soluble, water soluble, it draws water in. You need to hang on to every little bit of water that you can. Your body is in a very stressed out state trying to get water in. So we do not want that getting drawn to the digestive process because that is likely not going to reabsorb. Once it is gelatinized and taking that chia soluble fiber in the morning, it's there. Okay, it's not getting reabsorbed. It's more than likely just going to get past the stool. So the fiber can come in later on after you break your fast, not the morning prior to your fast, even though it might keep you quote unquote satiated. I don't think it's a good idea for what it can do for that overall just hypertonic state of your body. One thing you may want to consider doing shortly after you break your fast as well is taking in some cinnamon somehow. Okay, if you take in some cinnamon, what it can do is it can help modulate a little bit of that blood glucose response. So cinnamon is an insulin mimicker. Okay, it has something that's called methyl hydroxychalcone polymer, and it mimics insulin and allows the cell to take up glucose better. So you're getting very insulin sensitive at the end of a dry fast or any fast, right? So when you eat your food, you want to make sure that your body is able to suck up that glucose and do something with it rather than keeping your glucose levels elevated. So cinnamon can just kind of help modulate that a little bit. So add it to your dishes, add it to whatever. I mean, if you're going to just put it on your dates, just something to kind of help out your body with utilizing that glucose a little bit better. A question that comes up a lot as well is going to be, what supplements to take. Wouldn't really recommend adding anything new to your protocol, but if you want to get, I guess, a little bit of extra sort of metabolic benefit, you could try taking in what is called coenzyme Q10, which can just help out your body with manufacturing energy during this process. So during Ramadan, the benefit is you're probably developing a lot of what is called mitochondrial efficiency. You're developing an ability for your cells to manufacture energy outside of food. It's getting more efficient, okay? You're getting more mitochondrial density. One of the ways that you can improve how your body creates energy with this newfound mitochondrial density is utilizing coenzyme Q10. So taking that during your feeding period might not be a bad idea. Another thing you probably want to take in is going to be magnesium. Now, I know I said don't take a bunch of electrolytes, but that means don't add in a bunch of extra sodium. I would say magnesium would probably be an important one because if you look at that chart that I showed on the screen, sodium, potassium, and chloride stay relatively elevated, but some of the other ones tend to drop because we oxidize magnesium like crazy. We don't necessarily oxidize a bunch of sodium. Okay, magnesium is required in over 300 different enzymatic processes within the body. So as our body is upregulating a lot of things because of autophagy related to dry fasting, well then of course we're going to burn up a lot of magnesium and oxidize it. So that one might be something. So like a longer chain dimagnesium malase that takes a little bit longer to break down, that would be something that I would consider adding in. Another one that's very important is going to be algal oil or fish oil. Now I understand that with fish oil, a lot of people that are doing Ramadan are going to be vegetarian or vegan, so they can't do regular fish oil. I would recommend algal oil. What it is an algae source of omega-3 that is still going to get you what is called the docosahexaenoic acid that you need for good brain function. My bigger concern is after 30 days of Ramadan, like what's going to happen to your omega-6, omega-3 ratios within your body? Your omega-6 ratios are going to go way up because you're consuming a bunch of grains and starches and whatever you can get your hands on and probably processed food in a lot of cases, and you're not getting enough omega-3s to balance it. So I would tremendously upregulate how much you take in the way of an omega-3. I would recommend taking like 5,000 to 8,000 milligrams, like 5 to 8 grams of good quality fish oil or algal oil. That'll help you out a lot. Now, if you're still here with this video and you're interested in learning, let's jump in really quick to a specific kind of autophagy that's occurring during dry fasting. So autophagy is where you have cellular recycling that occurs, okay? The cellular recycling is awesome during any kind of fasting, but with dry fasting, it's accelerated. It's a much more intense dry fast sort of autophagy because the body has no choice but to, instead of just recycling unused components of proteins, it kind of freaks out and recycles all components of proteins in an effort to trigger a better cell structure. So you have a lot more autophagy happening in a shorter amount of time. It's called the hypertonic autophagy, and there is a study published in the journal Autophagy that found that it completely rewires how a cell structure is built. So my point in saying this is in 12 to 16 hours of dry fasting, you're probably getting the same amount of autophagy that someone would get in like 48 hours of wet fasting. That's somewhat speculated, but based on the research, it's kind of what you see. So in order to kind of continue this autophagy on and get more benefit out of this, after you're done with your 30 days of Ramadan, I would highly recommend you consume a lot of green tea. I would recommend you consume a lot of ginger. I would recommend you consume a lot of turmeric. What that's going to do is that's going to help stabilize and help that autophagy process even more so you can potentially carry on some of the benefits. And then I would recommend that you implement intermittent fasting a couple days per week so that way your body's going to be a little bit more adapted to this whole process next time around. Your body's used to it, and then when you throw in the wrench of making it a dry fast versus a typical intermittent fast, wet fast, well, then you're going to be in a lot better position. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel. If you have specific questions surrounding Ramadan, put them down below in the comment section, and I will see you tomorrow.